Study has found that 500,000 Brits were left on A&E trolleys for 12 hours or more last year. Wes Streeting was going to sort this out with his big, shiny new plan. Let's have a listen to what the Health Secretary had to say.
The NHS is going through what is objectively the worst crisis in its history. And whether it's people struggling to get access to their GP, dialling 999 and an ambulance not arriving in time, turning up to A&E departments, waiting far too long, sometimes on trolleys in corridors, or going through the ordeal of knowing that you're waiting for a diagnosis that could be the difference between life and death.
So he's the man to save it, James. Do we have, or should we have, faith in Mr. Streeting? And are we likely to see fewer people waiting in A&E over the next year?
I do think that, to try and give some credit, that Wes Streeting, who I've never met, seems to be the most kind of competent and impressive and driven member of the Labour cabinet, which is perhaps damning with faint praise. But yeah. I do think at least that he is an ambitious enough guy to realise that he's been handed this very, very difficult brief, knows the NHS is in a real pickle, and it's probably because he's on the left, able to slay some sacred cows and tell some dark home truths that the Conservatives have always been too scared to do. These ideas that it's the worst time ever for the NHS, you can go back through the entire history of the NHS since it was founded in the late 1940s, and all the time you're hearing about crises. And the reason for that is not that the Tories have strangled it of money, far from it. Actually, after the Brexit vote, the Tories did end up giving even more extra money to the NHS than that big red Brexit bus promised. They just didn't get any fanfare for it at all because people didn't believe it. It's not about money so much as the system itself. Yeah. And you get criticised endlessly for daring to say anything wrong about the NHS. But when you criticise it, I'm not talking about the doctors, I'm not criticising the nurses, I'm not even criticising the people whose job it is to go around and trying to allocate various rooms to people who are waiting on those beds. The system itself is a fundamentally not good system. You know, the Canadians do something a bit similar to us, but other than that, no other developed country has anything that looks like the NHS. Let's go and have a look, as so many lefties want to do, to what happens in Europe, who, for all their many other faults, do have more sensible healthcare systems than us. You know, you don't end up dying because you can't afford to pay for it or any of these sorts of scary stories, but you do find systems that work better. And a lot of that is, it has to be said, private sector involvement at a higher level, because if you can make money out of something, you deliver a better quality service. And we're comfortable with that when it comes to food. We're comfortable when it comes to that with cars, and you know how amazing things like that are. We seem to be too squeamish because of, I think, scaremongering to do that when it comes to healthcare.
Yeah, spot on. And of course, the irredeemable reality, though, James, is that even if we did have a new system, we've still desperately short of clinicians, and that's another issue here, isn't it? You can throw as much money in or change the way it functions, but unless we've got the people at the coalface, nothing much is going to change.
Yeah, it's a great point. But, you know, I didn't realise this until quite recently, that we put an artificial cap on the number of British medical students that we allow every year.
Yeah, I don't know why that. Why is that?
I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it? I think it's something to do with the kind of the trade unions involved in all of it, the kind of junior doctors' unions and things like that, to kind of artificially keep the numbers down so they've got higher bargaining power and things like that. But what ends up happening is that the ones that you do train up end up not being probably paid enough, I would say. You know, the junior doctors have got something in there. You work hard, you should be able to be paid more. But I think, of course, everybody in the UK is paid far too little. The kind of money that, you know, counts as a decent salary here would almost get you food stamps in the United States right now. But we also end up then importing loads of foreign doctors in because we've not trained up enough of our own. And then British doctors who do go through the system, they do a couple of years in the NHS, and then they get nabbed by the Australian healthcare system that promises them much more money and nicer sunshine. It's a completely ludicrous system, and it's the state getting in the way of this.
Let's finish on well, I was about to say a more light-hearted note, or it could equally be disturbing. Some research into tasks, basic DIY tasks that Gen Zers won't do. So it was Halfords, our friends over there in the kind of, well, once upon a time just cars and bikes department, have revealed that Gen Zers adults spend £1,300 annually on professionals for basic tasks, compared to £386 of Gen Xers. 1 in 5 Gen Z adults cannot identify a spanner. I mean, who doesn't know what a spanner is, for God's sake? 30% cannot recognise a flathead screwdriver. Nearly a quarter of Gen Zers avoid changing light bulbs, citing health and safety of a ladder. Over 65% of 18, 20 to 27-year-olds do not know how to fit wiper blades, and 34% cannot identify a car battery. What the heck are we doing here, James?
It would be rude and crude of me to suggest that if they don't know what a spanner looks like, they could look around the cabinet table, wouldn't it? That would be too mean of me.
Yeah.
But I think that I'm slightly torn. But you have got apps now that will allow professionals to come and do these tasks better than you could yourself, and so there's a market there, and that's just allocating people with skills to people who require those skills. That's very efficient. It leaves you more time to get on with coding AI or whatever it may be in the modern world today, or sadly more likely playing on TikTok. So that's good in that sense. But the other problem with it is probably the fact that it's so much more difficult to get on the property market now. You see those nice pictures behind me. They're not hammered into the wall with an old-fashioned nail and a hammer. They've got those sort of weird sticky things on them. That means that you can peel them off without damaging the paint, because people don't own their own homes and therefore aren't allowed to decorate in the way that they want, and they're perhaps too scared to do DIY because the landlord might go and shout at them and put their rents up even more. So there's probably the structural reason behind it to try and give the poor Gen Zs a break. But the light bulb thing is completely ludicrous. What a very bright idea.
What do you like, James, in the DIY department?
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good when it comes to IKEA furniture.
I love it. I would do that for a living if I had to. Putting up IKEA furniture.
You could do. You've got a big market of all the Gen Zers or the Gen Zers who want it. The one thing I won't touch is plumbing. A lesson learned from my old man, that don't mess around with plumbing.
Don't mess around with the plumbing.
Results there could be disastrous.
Or electrics, and certainly not at the same time, because that can really be a recipe for disaster. Brilliant. James, thank you as ever. James Price, political commentator.